David could not shake the memory of the young girl. Her smile haunted him in the quiet moments. When he was alone with his thoughts, he remembered the way her eyes seemed to see through the walls he had built around himself, and for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something dangerous and exciting that he had thought was gone forever. He kept replaying every word, every laugh, and every pause in the conversation, hoping for some hidden meaning he had missed the way she had tilted her head when he spoke about his son, as if she understood the depth of his love and the exhaustion of being a single father. He thought back to the moment they had stepped out of the cafe. The night air had been crisp and the streets nearly empty. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement from an earlier rain, and he felt a strange electricity in the quiet that wrapped around them like a secret only they could share. She had asked him if he ever felt that life had more layers than people realized, and he had nodded slowly, wondering what she really meant. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he had noticed a figure moving in the alley behind them, but when he had turned, it had vanished, and he told himself it was just his imagination. Yet a chill ran down his spine. The next day David could not focus at work. Every meeting, every call felt like a blur, and all he could think about was her words about fate and secrets, and he found himself retracing the night in his mind, trying to catch the moment when she had looked at him differently than any other person had ever looked at him before. He remembered how she had laughed at a joke he had not even realized he had made, and how the sound of it had made his chest tighten, as if she had unlocked a part of him he had kept hidden even from himself. Decided he had to see her again, but the number she had given him, the smile she had left on his mind, every detail seemed to vanish, like smoke slipping through his fingers. He tried calling and messaging, but each attempt returned nothing, no answer, no trace of her, and he began to wonder if she had ever been real, or if she was some figment of a tired mind. Desperate for connection, yet a persistent feeling told him that she was real, and that something important hung in the balance, and he could not let it go. David's son noticed the change in his father. He saw the restless nights, the distracted mornings, the way his father's eyes sometimes searched the empty spaces of the apartment as if expecting someone to appear. And one evening, his son asked if he had met someone special, and David hesitated because he did not know what to say. He did not even know if he could explain that this girl had stirred emotions and fears he had not confronted in years. He simply smiled and said maybe, and hoped that was enough to satisfy the curious mind of his son. The following weekend he returned to the cafe, hoping for a miracle. He arrived early again, scanning the room. The familiar scent of coffee and baked bread brought back the memory of her presence, and he wondered if she would appear, as if summoned by his thoughts, and the minutes stretched into hours with no sign of her, and he began to question if fate was a cruel trick designed to tease him, or if it was waiting to reveal something far more complicated. And he left the cafe feeling a strange emptiness, mixed with anticipation. On the street outside, he noticed a small envelope tucked under the door of a nearby shop. He bent to pick it up and saw that it had his name written in delicate handwriting that sent a shiver through him. He opened it carefully and found a note that said, "Meet me where the city sleeps and the shadows hold the truth." And there was a key taped inside, and he felt his heart pound with excitement and fear and curiosity all at once. And he knew that the night ahead would change everything, but he did not yet know how far it would go. That evening he followed the instructions. The key burned in his pocket, a constant reminder that he was about to enter a space unknown to him. He walked through the narrow streets, lined with buildings that had seen decades of lives pass through them, and each step brought him closer to a feeling of being watched. And when he reached the old theater at the end of the lane, he saw the door slightly ajar, a faint light spilling out onto the cracked pavement, and he hesitated for a moment, questioning his sanity before pushing it open. Inside the theater, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of forgotten memories, and there she was sitting in the middle of the stage, bathed in a single beam of light, her eyes fixed on him and a smile playing on her lips. That made his pulse race. She gestured for him to come closer, and as he stepped forward, he noticed the walls were covered with photographs and newspaper clippings that seemed familiar, yet he could not place them, and he realized that the more he saw, the more he sensed a story unfolding that he was not yet ready to understand. She stood slowly and walked toward him, her steps silent yet deliberate, and when she reached him, she handed him a small object wrapped in fabric that felt heavy with meaning. He opened it and saw a locket inside. He looked at her questioningly, and she whispered, "It contains everything you need to know, but not everything you are ready to hear." And he felt a shiver travel down his spine, because the words seemed to carry a warning as well as a promise. As the lights flickered and shadows danced across the walls, he felt a tension in the room that made the hair on his arms stand on end. He asked who she was really, and why she had chosen him, and she only smiled, more mysteriously, saying that some truths are only revealed when the time is right, and some paths must be walked blindly yet with courage. And David realized that he was at the edge of a journey that could not be reversed, and that every decision he made from this moment would echo into the future in ways he could not predict. Suddenly, there was a noise behind the curtains, a scraping sound like someone trying to remain unnoticed, and he instinctively moved in front of his son, who had followed him despite his instructions, and she placed a hand on his shoulder, saying, "Trust me, but be ready." And in that instant the shadows shifted, and a figure emerged from the darkness, just enough to catch his attention, and then vanished, leaving him with a question that would haunt him for nights to come. David knew the night was far from over. He clutched the locket to his chest and turned to her, expecting answers, and instead he found only more questions in her gaze and a hint of urgency in her voice, telling him that the real test had yet to begin. And as he stepped toward the stage, she disappeared again, leaving only a whisper of a warning that echoed through the theater, and it was clear that the world he had known would never be same. David stepped out of the theater into the cold night air, his heart still racing from the encounter inside. He clutched the locket tightly and wondered who she really was, and why she had vanished, leaving only clues and questions that pulled him deeper into a world he had never known existed. The streets were quiet, yet every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own, as if the city itself was watching him, waiting for him to make the next move. Turned the locket over in his hand and opened it slowly. Inside was a tiny photograph of a place he did not recognize, and a folded piece of paper with a map drawn in intricate lines. He traced the route with his finger and realized it led to an abandoned house at the edge of the city, a place he had never dared to go, yet something in her eyes had told him that the answers he sought were there waiting for him. He took a deep breath and began walking toward the unknown. As he approached the house, the wind howled through broken windows and the paint peeled like forgotten memories. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and a chill ran through him. The air inside smelled of dust and old wood, and for a moment he hesitated, wondering if he should turn back, but the thought of the girl and the locket and the unanswered questions kept him moving forward. Inside the house, the floors groaned under his weight, and the shadows seemed to twist and stretch in impossible ways. He followed the map through narrow hallways and up a staircase that threatened to collapse beneath him at any moment. Every step made him feel like he was being drawn into a story he could not escape, and he realized that he was no longer just looking for answers. He was part of something far bigger than he could comprehend. At the top of the staircase, he found a door slightly ajar, a faint light spilling from within. He pushed it open and saw her sitting at a table covered in papers, photographs, and strange symbols. She looked up at him and smiled, a mixture of relief and warning in her eyes. She whispered that time was running out, that the people who had been watching her and him were closer than he thought, and that he had only just begun to understand the danger he was in before he could ask a question. There was a noise behind the door, A shadow moved across the room, and he felt a presence that made his blood run cold. He stepped in front of her instinctively, and the figure paused and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a note scrawled in hurried handwriting that said, "Trust no one and follow the path carefully, or everything you love will be lost." He felt the weight of the words pressing down on him, like a storm that refused to pass. She handed him another piece of the puzzle, a small key, and told him it opened a safe hidden beneath the floorboards in the cellar, a safe that contained the truth about her past and his future. And she warned that once he opened it, there would be no turning back, and he realized that the choice was his alone, and that the life he had known was gone forever. He nodded, and together they moved to the cellar, their steps echoing through the empty house.